I am Rock Lee, and you're listening to the Zane Man.
Oh, yes, Danhausen here, Danhausen. Listen to the Zan Man, or be cursed.
Tonight, I am Batman, and you're listening to the Zan Man.
Well, Mr. Zan-Man.
Episode 3. Some Zandom Thoughts brought to you by me, the Zan Man. That's right, episode 3 already of Zandom Thoughts, and we've been doing a good job of meeting our quotas. And I guess I really haven't described what the upload schedule is going to look like here on the Zan Man podcast. And so I'll just say it. We upload on Tuesdays. Our goal is to upload every Tuesday, unless told otherwise. There will be the occasional thing where I'm like, I'm going on vacation, and so in order to give you the best quality episode, I'm going to skip this week and do it next week. But like I said, that should be far and few between. I'm going to try and hit it week after week, and consistency is key. And that key can unlock many doors. I don't even know what voice I was trying to do. I was going to say Squidward of all voices, but that definitely is Squidward. Oh, yeah, see, it doesn't match at all. But welcome to episode 3 of Zandom Thoughts, and as you can see by the title of this video, it has to do with some kids shows, and I thought it would be an appropriate episode to save for around Father's Day, which was a couple of days ago at the time of this being uploaded. Happy belated Father's Day to all of the fathers out there, because even though the day is over, the appreciation for that job, which it's more of a blessing actually than a job, and it's honestly something. I always wanted to get married. I always wanted to have kids, but I never knew I would love being a dad as much as I do, and I never want that thought process to go away of truly appreciating this position in life that I've been blessed with. I've been blessed with a wonderful wife. I've been blessed with 2 beautiful kids, and I've got a third one on the way. So life's about to get a lot more hectic, but a lot more blessed in turn. And so just remember to all the fathers out there, it is an important job. Your kids need you. They need your investment. And quite frankly, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing that we should call ourselves lucky to find. Even if you're one of those people that fell into it. You call it a mistake, but it's actually a blessing. You were blessed with kids that you now get to be the father of. You get to raise into wonderful human beings, hopefully. And I would hope that you look at it that way. But we're not going to that's not what the podcast is about. I just thought it would be fitting that the two happen to shake hands right in the middle, because I am a dad. And I'm only going to be covering some kids shows that my kids themselves watch. And so if you're interested in any of the following, the time frames are going to be in the show notes, but we're going to be covering 3 shows and some weird fan theories today. That means it's going to be people who watch the show and then they're like, something's off about that character. And so they come up with theories to try and explain why that character's weird and stuff like that. It's almost like conspiracy theories within the contents of children's shows. And if that sounds fun with you, it should. It should be fun. Meanwhile, at least one of you is like, this grown man talking about kids stuff. You're going too deep into it. Just don't take the innocence out of my kids' shows. And I'm not. I actually have an appreciation for these shows, much like my kids do. And the 3 shows I am going to be covering today are Blue's Clues, Bluey, and Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. And if you don't know what any of those are, don't worry. I'm going to give a brief description at the end, or beginning rather, of each segment, and proceed to talk about these theories. And so if you haven't seen the show or you don't know about it, I'm sorry. A couple of these theories, you're going to have some knowledge of the actual show. Like, you're going to have seen some episodes. Even though I cite it pretty well, I feel like, in my notes. So that's just a little bit of a warning. This might not be the episode for you if you don't like being lost at a couple times in the episode. But I'll try and make it fun for everybody. That's my job, to make the best quality podcast that's not just for you. It's not just for you. Imagine I'm pointing It's for everyone. And without further ado, let's ruin some kids' cartoons. And I think the most fitting one to start with is Bluey, because on this list, at least by today's standards, I think it's probably the most popular show on the list. And honestly, if there's a show that anybody's going to watch of their own free will, it's probably this one, because it's one of the few kids shows that I can say, rather than like, there's kids shows out there that like take into consideration that adults are going to have to watch it as well. But usually when they take that into consideration, they insert some like perverted jokes and stuff like that. This one knows that parents are watching and knows how to affect you by hitting on the emotional feels and everything like that. It really knows how to pluck the heartstrings of parents, and it's just very wholesome. Obviously, kid shows in general are wholesome, but it's wholesome for the whole family. It's not just for kids; it's for adults. There's episodes that make my emotional wife cry and make me go, "Oh, I'm gonna look away and act like I'm not affected by them." But it is a very well put together show, made by parents for parents, I imagine. And if you don't know what Bluey is, it's about a little blue dog who has a dad, who has a mom, who has a sister, and it's about their adventures together. The mom and dad often play games with the kids, like in their over-the-top games where they go around the house and stuff, as we'll get into with some of the theories. Some of their games are so over-the-top that it leads to people suspecting that if they're playing a game that suggests magical things, that the magic is actually real. Ooh, and stuff like that. And honestly, whenever I first saw the show, I was like, oh, that stupid little blue dog that you see everywhere. Screw that show. I'm not watching that, and my kids aren't watching it either. And then my wife got into it before I did. She was showing them on YouTube, and then we got Disney Plus, so they watched all the episodes on Disney Plus. And there was one day where I walked in, and she was kind of tearing up a bit, and I was like, oh, really? Like, what's going on with you? But that was the little trap being set, because now I was intrigued of is it really that emotionally attached? And so we watched a couple of games. There was one that had a throwback to that game where you pass a present around, and if it stops on you, you unwrap it, but there's like multiple layers to the present, and whoever unwraps it last gets the gift past the parcel. And it was pretty entertaining. And long story short, I made it my not that I had to make it a priority. It's one of the regular shows in our house. I'm going to see that season 100 times over. But I made it a priority to actually sit down and watch this with Valerie whenever she would want to watch a TV show, because it's informative, it's wholesome, and it's good, clean fun. And it really made a believer out of me. Like I said, I went from this stupid dog show to why don't we watch Bluey instead of that? Like, it's our default show. It really is that good. And so if you're a parent out there and you're on the fence, turn off Miss Rachel. She's very political anyway. And watch Bluey. Good, wholesome fun. Or so we think. What if I told you there's some darkness in Bluey? Not because of magic or anything like that, like I suggested earlier, but there's a lot of theories amongst the parents, amongst the kids, amongst everybody. Some of them are mild-mannered, but some of them are And we're just going to start off with number one. Theory number one. The healers live in a nudist colony. Which, don't worry, I'm not going to get perverted about it or anything. This is actually a funny theory that I saw on Reddit. And it's just such a small detail to suggest it. Because throughout the series, we always see primarily Bandit doing laundry in the yard, and occasionally we'll see neighbors doing laundry in the yard, but they're all dogs and they never wear clothes. The closest we get is like Judo's mom. I can't think of her name right now, but she wears a brooch, and you have some characters that wear hats and stuff like that, but for the most part, no pants, no shirts, but we always see them doing laundry. And it's kind of referenced a little bit in an episode where Bandit has to wipe his foot off, so he uses Bluey's shirt. And she's like, why would you use my shirt to wipe it off? I'm doing the worst Australian accent you've ever heard. And he's like, you hardly ever wear it. And it's like, no, she never wears it. So because they're constantly washing laundry but never wearing clothes, it suggested that they have to abide by the standards set in their nudist colony, which everybody is just fine walking around nude. But it can also just be explained that there are a bunch of dogs, and dogs don't really wear clothes. Still, it's funny to think about it because there's details like that. My wife actually pointed out the other day, like Bandit or Chili will be crawling around on the floor, and instead of walking around like a dog, they're crawling on their hands and knees. And that suggests that these dogs used to be human, or they come from a post-apocalyptic. There's a lot of holes in those theories. That's why I'm not going to read them here, but there are theories that like, oh, this is a community of dogs that survived the apocalypse and they mutated and now they've taken over because the humans are all gone. And their reasoning for that is like, you'll hear Bingo sing a song and she's talking about how a dog is being taken on a leash by a man and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm not going to get into those theories because those theories are boring. And honestly, most of the big YouTube channels out there are covering it. Then again, you could say about a lot of it. It just doesn't interest me personally. But them living in a nudist colony, where are your priorities at, man? But the nudist colony kind of also plays on a couple of the other theories that I have. Primarily because a nudist colony would be very comfortable around each other. In that manner, they're always hanging around. They're always seeing each other in a different light while not being affected by the nudity. And I say that to say because a lot of these theories are going to be that, well, I'm going to just say it. Number 2 is that the healers are swingers. And if you don't know what a swinger is, they are people who are in an open relationship. That's right. Chili can pursue other boyfriends outside of the marriage. Bandit can approach other females outside of the marriage, or they're just straight up cheating on each other. First, we're going to start about the open relationship, though, or being swingers. This comes from, and I don't agree with this one, mainly because I had never heard about it before today. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But apparently, there's a lot of pineapple imagery around the house, like upside down pineapples and pineapples on the wall and all sorts of decorations that have pineapple. And rather than it be because they're in Australia and there's pineapples that are prominent in the area, apparently pineapple imagery is often associated with couples that are in open relationships, if I'm not mistaken. It's not a United States thing, I don't think. At least I've never heard of it. I just might be uneducated. I'm so stupid. But no, that's apparently the main reason why they suggest this, but also because Bandit is very comfortable around the neighbor, Judo's mom, whose name now I remember because it's in my notes, Wendy. Now, there's all sorts of weird happenings that happen between Bandit and Wendy, and sometimes Wendy seems annoyed, other times it seems like she's like, oh, something there? And it realistically, I'll just go ahead and debunk it myself. Realistically, it's because Wendy's a single parent to Judo, who's her daughter, and the healer families are very inclusive of her daughter, so she's probably very appreciative of that. And she's constantly getting wrapped up in the crazy adventures that they have together. So she's probably very comfortable with this family because they've seen each other in a lot of, weird ways. See, now that's helping the other theory a little bit. But essentially, like, there's an episode where Bluey becomes, in the game they're playing, Bandit is Bluey's employee and she orders him to clean the window, but he doesn't have anything to clean it with. So Bluey orders him to clean it with his bum. So he puts his butt on the window and rubs it side to side. And as his butt cheeks are rubbing on the window, Wendy just happens to see it and she's like, oh. And then there's another instance where they're playing a game and Bandit essentially becomes a rag doll, and it's to teach Bluey and Bingo a lesson. They have to move him to the car if they want to go to the store and get some ice cream. Wendy just happens to be passing by whenever the girls are getting him outside. And so when she asks what's going on, Bluey and Bingo are like, oh, our dad stole our money, which was just Bandit's money that he dropped on the ground. And they wanted to use that to get ice cream, but Bandit did the whole lesson thing. And so they painted it as though Bandit stole their ice cream and he's bullying them. And so Wendy kind of catches on and she kind of plays along with Bandit's own thing. And she's like, here, I'll help you. But this is a show assigned to never be lazy and to work for everything you've got. You got it, girls? And so she kind of plays along with it. But she like grabs Bandit's legs and drags him over to the car herself and stuff like that, and uses her Pilates knowledge to lift him into the car and stuff like that. And the whole time Bandit's making comments like, whoa, Wendy, watch the hands. Like, it's a very, like, he's almost shocked that she's doing that in front of their kids kind of way. And then whenever she's lifting him into the car, he makes a comment about her quads and he's super impressed with them and stuff like that. There's an episode where she shaves her hair. And it's a symbolic thing. I'm not going to go into all the details of every episode. I would encourage you guys just to watch it. But she shaves her hair and Bandit notes that he really likes her new do and stuff like that. So they just have like this weird relationship thing going on. And so a lot of people look at that and either Chili's allowing it or Bandit secretly having an affair with Wendy. And it's kind of an impression where it's like a lot of these neighbors and the relationships they have with each other and how close they are and some of the comments they make to each other. Just because I'm not accustomed to it doesn't mean that it's not how some people, portray their relationships with their neighbors. But I'm not the only one that thinks this. That Bandit is secretly an infidel who is cheating on his wonderful wife, Chili. But not that she's much better, because her and this is a theory anyway, that her and Pat, who just happens to be the next door neighbor on the other side of the fence, in an episode called Dance Mode, essentially to make up for eating Bingo's last fry, they give her a thing called Dance Mode. And what she does is at any point she can slap one of their tails and make them dance. And they just happen to do it while they're crossing the street. Well, they do it to Chili, who is the mom. And they smack her tail. She's dancing across the street. And who just happens to be in the car right there? Pat, who is the next door neighbor that is allegedly cheating with Chili. And she's like, oh yeah, shake it, Chili. The reason why this has to be included in here, I know I'm messing them all over the place. I promise it'll get a little bit more lined up and a little bit more close-knit together. But the reason why I'm laughing is a Reddit comment put it perfectly. And it's like, Pat said that in a way, like he's been saying that a lot lately. Like, ooh, yeah, shake it, Chili. He said it like a man who's a little too comfortable with saying a phrase like that. And then there's another episode called Stump Fest where apparently in Australia, I could be completely wrong, but AI on Google suggests that it's a real thing, where there's a day where people just go out and rip stumps up and it's like a big deal. Well, apparently they're all like celebrating in the yard and like Bluey's asking about it. She's like, why? What is Stump Fest? Why do we do Stump Fest? And they explain it to her. And then Pat makes the comment, and the ladies like to watch us get all sweaty. Right, ladies? And the person that's commenting isn't Pat's wife. It's Chili. And she goes, you got it, Lucky's dad, which Lucky's dad is Pat's nickname because his child's name is Lucky. And so everybody kind of just I guess it's a funny nickname and as a meme kind of calls him Lucky's dad. It's clear though, like, and this is a comment on the details that are enlisted in Bluey. They are very faint, but they paint a story where adults can kind of know what's going on. And essentially, here, I'll just read what I wrote down in my notes. Bluey is a very sophisticated show where entire storylines play out in the back of episodes. Like, it's clear and it's played out right before our very eyes, but we're so focused on the main characters that we often overlook them. It's definitely a show of small details, and so for a lot of these theories, it focuses on these small details at what could possibly be suggested, which is why we're bringing up pineapples and a single line here or there. But I bring that up not only to suggest why a bunch of these theories are being put together, but to also explain that Bluey tackles, like, there's an episode where it's clear the parents are battling a hangover and still they got to go and be parents. It's a very it's a very relatable thing for a lot of parents out there who choose to drink and stuff like that. I don't drink, but I imagine it's very relatable to those people. The reason why I say that is it's clear in that Stumpfest episode when she's like, "You got it, Lucky's dad," that the ladies up on the balcony are clearly having a couple of drinks. So she could just be one of those drunks that thinks she's funny. And she's just like going along with the joke. Either way, we can't look too much into it. Those are a lot of the details, and I know I kind of like threw a bunch of fruit at the wall and made a mosaic painting of random pieces of information, but that's why a lot of people think that these theories could be real. These particular ones, anyway. But one final piece of evidence that people suggest as to why Bandit and Chili are swingers is a lot of their games end up including their neighbors, and their neighbors just willingly participate. Like, no questions asked, they're game, they're ready to go. And that level of comfort isn't going to come naturally through, just being really good neighbors. I say that because there's games where Bandit acts like he was just born yesterday and runs up to Pat and takes the food out of his hand and starts eating it and then attacks him and stuff like that. Chili pounces on him, and I think it's her and Bingo are literally biting him and stuff like that. And so they're all a lot. When I say they're a close-knit community, I mean it. And so that's why a lot of people suggest the nudist colony is a thing, because once you've seen that, you're a lot more comfortable with them. Or if you're open to doing all of the extracurricular activities, you'd probably be a little bit more down for, participating in these over-the-top ridiculous games. I don't agree with that, but that is one of the big things that was suggested. Ultimately, it's probably nothing. It is probably just some very close friends who have known each other for a while. Chili has a preggers, a mother's group that she attends. They're constantly over at each other's houses, watching rugby and all sorts of other stuff. And they're constantly going to the park and hanging out and all sorts of other stuff. So it is not, impossible that they have a level of comfort, especially if they're going out partying and drinking, like, for real. So I personally don't believe it, but I can see this theory might have some merits. However, these next three that I'm going to be presenting, I fully believe, starting with number 3, Bandit and Chili are career criminals. Now, that might sound weird, but in Bluey, they live in a very nice neighborhood. I can't remember the exact details, but I think some people that live near the neighborhood in Australia, and people who, a lot of people who know about houses. People who know houses real good, they like to speculate the price. But no, a lot of people who know about that kind of stuff have speculated that the house that they live in Bluey is upwards anywhere between $1 to $2 million. So it's a pretty pricey, not mansion, but a pretty pricey house in a very nice neighborhood. So they're going to have to make some decent money. So Bandit is an archaeologist, which probably makes all right money, but I wouldn't put him anywhere in the ballpark of making $1 million by any means. So that means we have to possibly hope that Chili, if they can afford this house, is going to be doing a majority of the lifting. So what does she do? She's a TSA agent at the airport. So between the two of them, there's no way they are affording this house. But Bandit is an archaeologist, meaning he can dig up fossils, meaning he can dig up artifacts. And there's a little thing called the black market, or you could sell to private collectors. But that's the thing. How is he going to transport these goods to... Oh yeah, his wife's a TSA agent. So between the two of them, they are able to relocate these artifacts, relocate these fossils, and sell to the highest bidder, which I imagine is going to afford them a very pretty penny, and therefore be able to afford this house. Problem solved, right? But in case you don't know what any of that means, because I'm going to just try and break down as much as possible. Bandit is the one that goes out and gets the valuable things. And he's constantly emailing. He's constantly making phone calls. We see this in an episode where he upsets Bingo because Bingo's trying to get his attention and show him something. And he's like, let go. And he's like talking about what he needs. Oh, no, I need 1 or 2 of those, actually. Something like that. And he's constantly making deals over the phone. So he's probably got some people he can sell these items to. The transportation is where it's going to be difficult, but if he gets them on a plane and he has the help of security or the TSA agent to get him through and just allow him to take these quote-unquote illegal items across the airways to sell, well, that's the perfect crime, isn't it? And obviously there's a lot of hurdles they're going to have to jump over in order to make this happen. It's not just as simple as that, but they have proven to be very crafty dogs. And so that is why people believe they are career criminals. But what do you think? If at any point you hear a theory that I am talking about and you think, oh, no, that can't be right, or, oh, I have a better theory than that, feel free to leave it in a comment. Feel free to check out my email, xandomthoughts@gmail.com, and send me suggestions of ones that I should look up of your favorite children's shows, or maybe one that specifies Bluey, Blue's Clues, or Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. Just a little quick plug before we go to number 4. Which involves Chili's sister, Brandy. And before I reveal the actual theory, let me describe that there's an episode where Chili's sister, Brandy, actually comes to visit. And she actually doesn't visit too often, and you learn that she acts really weird around Bluey and Bingo. And later on in the episode, you learn it's because, or at least it's implied, that she can't have children. So being around Chili and Bluey and Bingo is very hard for her because she's constantly around what she can't have. But what if I told you here in theory number 4 that this is not necessarily the case, and that Brandy is actually the biological mother of Bingo? That's right, there's a theory that suggests that Chili is not Bingo's mother, but is actually her adopted mother, and Brandy is the biological mother of Bingo. We later learn in season 3, at the very end of the season, they have a family wedding where everyone attends. And in the background, you see Brandy, who is pregnant. That's right, she can have children. And one of the main reasons why people suspect that Brandy is potentially the mother is because in the episode where she visits before she's pregnant and everything, and things are super awkward, she is seeing Bluey and Bingo for the first time in a long time. I think it's 3 years or something like that. And she's like, Bluey, you look just like your dad. And Bluey's like, what? And then she turns to Bingo and goes, and Bluey, you look just like, and pauses, and she's taken aback and surprised. And Chili speaks for her and goes, you. Well, maybe not quite as serial killer-esque as I did, but it was in a kind of a, yeah, she's your, she didn't say straight up, yeah, she's your kid, but she resembles her highly. Chili has a little bit darker orange complexion at various points in her fur, and Bingo's colors are more in line with what Brandy looks like. The patterns, all that good stuff. Of course, if you've ever seen dogs and cat litters, you know that the children don't necessarily end up looking like the parents all the time, but they still would retain a lot of the features and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, there are times when I look at my son, and as a baby, he definitely looks more like my brother, like while he's sleeping and stuff, than he looks like me. But there are times where he still looks like me too, and I think that's the case for Bingo. So it doesn't necessarily mean because she resembles the sister more than the mother that she's the sister's daughter or anything like that. But essentially the theory goes that Brandy is not as well off as Bandit and Chili are. Granted, she doesn't know how they're getting their funds, but I assume if she knew they were criminals, she wouldn't have adopted Bingo to these lifetime these swine of the earth, Kakarot. But no, obviously the theory itself suggests that because Brandy is seen pregnant at the wedding, she has the ability to get pregnant. And so maybe that is a small little hint, because Bluey is a show of hints and in the small details that, she has the ability to get pregnant. And the reason it was so awkward for her to visit wasn't because she couldn't have kids, but because one of the kids she couldn't have that she had already gave birth to was Bingo. It never really feels like she gets awkward around Bluey. It feels like she only gets awkward around Bingo. There's a moment wherever Bingo's in a onesie and she's acting like the animal, which is a cheetah, of the onesie, and she attacks Brandy, and she's having the time of her life getting attacked by, a little kid. They're playing. It's like an adult kid play session. And when Bingo, quote unquote, completes the kill and runs away, Brandy looks absolutely heartbroken. And we never really get a moment like that between her and Bluey. So there is a clear attachment, not between her and Bluey, but between her and Bingo, which makes a lot of people look at that and suggest Chili's not the actual mom. She is the mom because she's the stepmom who adopted Bingo and has been providing for her and has been that mother to her. But she's not the biological mother in many people's opinions. But it's really just a theory based off of observation and speculation mixed together. So it's one that I think is kind of true, mainly because it just makes sense. But it's likely not. Chili's probably the biological mother. Which brings us to theory number 5, which really isn't a theory at this point. It's already been confirmed that this is the case by the people who write the show themselves. And it's that Chili had a miscarriage of their first child, and that Bluey is a rainbow baby, meaning it's the baby you have after a miscarriage, after you lose your first child. And the miscarriage theory was actually presented to me by my wife before I even started looking into Bluey. I hadn't even watched through the series yet, and I was just sitting there watching the TV show with my kids, having a fun time. And my wife was like, there's speculation that this episode proves that Chili had a miscarriage. And I'm like, what? Well, what now? What the heck? Where did that come from? And for whatever reason, I had the wrong episode of the miscarriage in my head. So the whole time I was like, how the heck does this suggest a miscarriage? Because the one I had in mind was Sleepy Time, where it's pretty much Bingo's dreaming and she's floating through space and all this other stuff. And even though that episode suggests a whole lot of other stuff, the theories I chose to drop, so that's not going to get covered or anything like that. I was like, what part is the miscarriage? No, the part that's the miscarriage is when Bluey and Bingo, for Mother's Day, decide to do a reenactment of Chili's life. And so Bingo plays Chili and Bluey plays Bandit. And they kind of go through how they met and all sorts of other stuff. And before you know it, they blow up a balloon, tuck it under Bingo's shirt. They put a shirt on her because they're nudists, so they don't always wear shirts. But she's got a little balloon tucked under her shirt. Bluey and her are hitting their tummies together and stuff like that. And as she goes to tell the story, the balloon pops. And you can see Bandit, in a shocked way, reach over and grabs Chili's hand almost to comfort her. And so right there, because of that motion and everything like that, the focus is obviously on Bingo being upset because she quote unquote ruined the performance, but a lot of people speculate that a traumatic experience just rose up. PTSD just flared. Something just happened and it brought up bad memories in the midst of all these good memories. And so because of that reaction, a lot of people were like, oh, Chili had a miscarriage, which apparently the showrunners confirmed. And so this was a big theory crossing the internet before it all happened. So that's why we make these theories, because there is a lot of detail behind the scene. It was one of those, if you're not really paying attention, oh no, poor Bingo. You don't realize that some deeper stuff was happening in the show. And that's why I ended up enjoying Bluey more than I actually did. Which all boils down to the head that it kind of another part that supported this theory before it was confirmed is there is an episode where it's raining outside and Bluey's doing everything in her power to block up the driveway or the walkway to try and flood it and get the water to stop. And so she keeps running in and outside the house and everything like that, and Chili's like getting frustrated with her. But by the end of the episode, she runs out there with her and tries to block up the driveway. Well, the rain stops and they turn around and admire a double rainbow together. And this is where she's the rainbow baby. She came after a miscarriage. Like I said, it's already all been confirmed, but there was a lot of details, just like there's a lot of details in some of these other theories, and that's why I decided to keep going on this one. And even though it's been confirmed, throw it out there and say, see, we're not freaking crazy. There's some deep stuff going on in these children's shows. You guys need to wake up. Sheeple, where you at? Ma! Anyway. But speaking of Brandy, there is an episode where Bandit talks about a quote-unquote fairy tale. And in this fairy tale, he ends up talking about he was younger and he made fun of his brother Stripe. And he ended up getting jinxed to where he couldn't talk unless someone said his name. And there was a consequence that we didn't hear about. But based on Bingo and Bluey's reaction when he whispered it in their ear, it was pretty bad. And so he couldn't talk. That was just the rule. It's a childhood game. I'm sure we all know some form of this game. And so he could not talk. So all vacation long, he couldn't talk unless someone said his name, and no one was willing to say his name. But at the end of the episode, he ends up throwing his hat to save his brother from the prickles in the yard, which his brother still doesn't end up saying his name. But as he's admiring his brother for this, because he respects him more because the younger brother took advantage of his, it's this whole thing. A girl grabs his hat, and since it's the 80s, his name is written on the inside brim of the hat, and she goes, Bandit Healer. And so it breaks the jinx. And we're led to believe that this is Chili because it's a spot where she used to vacation, but she does not remember this particular memory. And it could just be because they were kids. It was a long time ago, and she was just in her own world playing, and it just happened to be like a random thing. It's like if you give a homeless guy $1 in St. Louis or something like that, you don't remember it like 30 years later, unless you really want to feel like I did my good deed. Back all 20 years ago, I gave a homeless man $2. But you know what I mean. We have 1,000 things happen every single day, and we're not going to remember a bunch of them, even though it might be significant for someone else. Well, if you remember how I opened this particular theory, you might know where this theory is going. And it's that the reason why Chili doesn't remember this particular instance is because even though her and her family were vacationing in this spot, the girl that actually unjinxed Bandit was Brandy, not Chili, because they have a striking resemblance to each other. Obviously, they're close enough in looks to have Bingo look like Brandy, even if she's, theory before aside. There's obviously enough of a resemblance for them to possibly get mistaken at a younger age, which is obviously what this theory suggests. The episode in question is called Fairy Tale. I believe I've already said that, but this theory suggests that it's not as much as of a fairy tale beginning as it would originally suggest. There's also theories with less basis than this one that suggest Bandit was using Chili to cover up the fact that he might have met an ex-girlfriend there or something like that. Granted, it was all whenever Bandit was a little kid. That's why I said it doesn't really have much basis. And it is a cool little story of if the show is going that way. Oh, they met all those years ago, even before they met on that scale. But although she gets Bandit's name, Bandit never got her name. But then I guess Brandy, I don't know. Brandy would have probably brought it up if that was the case. But again, it happened a long time ago. But that's just a theory, a film theory, and cut. Which is a perfect transition into this next theory, which is going to be more of a debunking. Because there's a YouTube channel out there called Game Theory, and eventually that spawned another one called Film Theory, and now there's like 6 different theory channels, and essentially what they are is they create theories about different shows, about different video games, stuff like that, and it just gets really into the nitty-gritty about it. And they did an episode on Bluey where they suggested Bluey was a witch, which is funny to even think about, primarily because of the magic they do and that no one in their right mind would go along with half of the magic they choose to do, such as dance mode, where they are forced to dance in public, making absolute fools of themselves and stuff like that. And the video brings up multiple episodes, one called Feather Wand, where Bingo gets a hold of a feather and uses it as a wand. And all she has to do is point to an object and go, heavy, and it makes the object heavier. The videos are made by a guy named MatPat, and he suggests that there are moments where Bandit physically can't lift stuff, and so it has to be real, and that their neighbor ends up getting the heavy applied to his hat, and he wouldn't play along with it without knowing what the game was predetermined and everything like that. And so he brought up a bunch of reasons. He also brought up a game called Magic Xylophone, where if they hit the magic xylophone and tell someone to freeze, they have to freeze. And like they freeze Bandit out in the front lawn and put makeup on him and all sorts of other stuff. And he just stands there and the neighbors look at him weird and stuff like that. And MatPat suggests that even when they walk away, he just stands there and is very frozen, and that they probably wouldn't be committed to the bit. And there's one point wherever Bingo uses the xylophone on Bluey because Bluey won't share the xylophone with Bingo, and that a but like a young kid like Bluey would not give up the xylophone if she didn't want to. If she truly wanted to hog it, they would fight over it, and the game would essentially end. But Bluey played along, and there's no way that would have happened. And I have an example from each episode that exemplifies why the magic is not real. And the first one is in Feather Wand. The very first instance we see Bingo truly use it when someone else is playing, because she quote-unquote tests it out on I think it's a tape holder, and she goes, Feather Wand, heavy, and then she can't lift it. So obviously, if she's the one creating the game, she's going to play by the rules. Well, the next, she goes in the kitchen and goes, Feather Wand, heavy. And Bandit doesn't hear her, and he goes, what? And she goes, I said Feather Wand, heavy. And then he plays along. So until he was aware of what the game was, he didn't play along. And MatPat's, example of why the magic was real is because no one else heard the game and what was going on, but the family wasn't exactly being quiet, and I'm sure this isn't the first time they've played a game like this, so it's not exactly unheard of if the entire house catches on even before it's their turn to play the game and the game spreads across multiple rooms, in my opinion. And in Magic Xylophone, there's a moment where Bandit gets a hold of the xylophone and freezes both Bluey and Bingo. He even hits it multiple times saying, freeze, freeze, freeze. And you have to say unfreeze in order to allow them to move again. So he didn't spam it to the point where it didn't work, but he said freeze, 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 and Bingo continues to run out of the room. So she would have been affected by the magic if magic was real in the show, because it affected Bluey. She froze. It's just a matter of, playing along. Bingo is a little kid and, oh, I got to get out of here before I'm frozen. And she was so focused on getting out of the room that she forgot to abide by the rules. That's really all there is to it. So there's beautiful little details in the show that like give you just enough to be like, the magic's really not real. But even on the ones that make you suspend a ton of belief, like there's an episode where a fairy comes on screen and only Bingo can see her or something like that. I don't know. I do think that this story is being told from the perspective of a child, and it's a lot of the shows are how they would view these instances. The parents are playing along, and they're playing along very well. And plus the writers of the show just make the parents over the top goofy so that they will, be that much more entertaining. So if you are someone who believes the magic is real in Bluey, I would encourage you to look for the small little details. There are a couple of episodes where I haven't found them, but I guarantee you if you keep watching the same episode 100,000 times, which is going to happen by the end of this year more than likely with how frequently we watch this show, you'll be able to find answers because the show writers write them in. And the final theory for Bluey, I know we're quite a bit ways into the episode, and the Bluey theories are easily going to have a higher quantity than Blue's Clues and Daniel Tiger. Daniel Tiger, I have a couple of theories that I personally think, and I've kind of come up on my own, so they're not going to be like popular on the internet. And Blue's Clues only has one big theory, so those are going to go very quickly. So if you've made it to this point in the video, you've made it through the majority of these theories. And like I said, suggest some of your own. But if you enjoyed this, why not rate the episode? Why not tell me I want more theory episodes? And maybe I will come up with some of my own. But I've enjoyed doing this, so if you've enjoyed doing it too, just let me know. And more will be on the way. But I've saved the best, well, maybe not the best Bluey theory, but one that makes the most sense of the most questions I've had about theories. Like, why are their neighbors so comfortable with them? How are they able to afford such an expensive house? And there's even a lot of moments in the show where it feels like the characters are talking directly to whoever's watching the episode. And so all of these things suggest in a theory that Bluey and her family are a part of a reality show. Think about it. This would explain why their games are always taken to the extreme and even spill out into public settings. This would explain why the rest of the cast, I mean neighbors, are so willing to get in the middle of all of these episodes and be absolutely ridiculous in doing so. And it would explain how they're able to afford such an expensive house. Because Bluey and her family are reality stars. They're the Kardashians of the Bluey universe. It's kind of what it's suggesting. And one of the big things that started making people suggest this is there's a example in an episode where Bingo's trying to figure out a game to play by herself. And she's like, oh, I could play I Spy. I spy something that's green. Oh, wait, no, this isn't going to work. And then she looks at the camera and says, it was the rug, by the way. And I think it's just to show that Bingo's just an adorable little girl. But at the same time, who the heck is she talking to? There's also a lot of moments where, like, Bandit kind of gives a office vibe style look at the camera. Chili's constantly rolling her eyes at the camera. There's a lot of camera watching going on at various points if you pay attention to it. And the only thing that wouldn't explain this theory is that there's occasionally just a random episode where, like, they focus on characters who aren't Bluey or Bluey's family. It's just like, oh, hey, let's go see how Rusty and his friends are doing today. And stuff like that. So that's the only thing I could think of that would debunk this theory. Otherwise, all the small details seem to suggest that this is the right course of action. But what do you guys think? Are any of these theories right? Or am I just a dweeb who looks too much into children's shows? We've spent quite a time here on Bluey, though, so I think it is time for us to move on to another one. And I think a fitting one to do is Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. Which I should say that the Bluey theories are probably the most fun, But the Daniel Tiger theories are the ones that I'm most proud of because I came up with the majority of these by myself. By that I mean, I thought some things, I went on Reddit, and I looked specifically in yeah, I'm a loser. I looked specifically in the Daniel Tiger conspiracy theories section of it, and then just got ideas that kind of supplement my initial theory. But the base point of the theories are ones that I came up with myself, even though multiple people might be thinking about them. So if they get a little bit over the top and a little bit crazy, that's why, because this is kind of not my baby. I don't want to call it my baby. That's weird, but they're my baby. And the theories are going to be a lot different for Daniel Tiger, mainly because it's not going to be like theory 1. Decrepit men live under the boat. It's just going to be rapid fire, one after the other, explaining theory after theory, because they all kind of go hand in hand, and it's just one giant theory about the secret world of Daniel Tiger. Mainly because people on subreddits are freaks, and all you see on their theories are like, oh, Baker Acre and Grand Pierre are secret gay lovers. And it's like, I don't care about that. And they're not. Baker Acre married the doctor chick. So he's straight. Gotcha. That's where you hear the angry people who have to have a gay person in their show. It's a cover-up. Yeah, you hear my angry keyboard. But no, these are all just one after another. But first, let's go into what Daniel Tiger is, and it's Daniel Tiger's neighborhood. And if you ever saw the original Mr. Rogers, it's based on the land of make-believe. Like whenever his little train goes into the other world with all the puppets, it's based on those characters. The King, Friday, Prince Wednesday, Daniel Tiger, Katarina, or is it Henrietta? I don't know which ones all exist in Mr. Rogers. It's been such a long time. I probably would have been more professional if I would have researched that. But the reality is I didn't. So sue me. And essentially what the TV show Daniel Tiger boils down to is the main character is obviously Daniel Tiger. He lives with his parents in the land of make-believe, which is his neighborhood. And he just goes through his day every single day, going to school, going to the beach, hanging out with his family members, learning about new things. Like every single episode is a brand new lesson that he learns. Lessons about sharing, lessons about if you don't get what you want, take a deep breath to help yourself feel better. These stupid little jingles get stuck in your head. And it's from things like life lessons on how to interact with other people, all down to the nitty gritty of, hey, if you feel like you have to go potty, go freaking sit on the toilet and poop, you idiot. Like, that's what the episodes are. Every single one's a lesson. And my initial theory is I noticed that Daniel Tiger and his family rarely eat meat. Like there's an occasional episode where they'll eat chicken soup that's brought to them when they're sick. In like Thanksgiving or feast-based episodes, there's occasionally like a turkey or something on the table. But for the most part, in their home, at events, no matter where they're at, they always eat some sort of fruit or cake or something like that. Rarely ever meat. And I think this is something that is, well, I should explain. Daniel Tiger's neighborhood is ran by a royal family. King Friday, his wife, I don't remember his wife's name, but Prince Tuesday, which is his son, and Prince Wednesday, which is his youngest son, who's about Daniel's age. Prince Tuesday is a college-aged young man. And my theory is that at some point, maybe it was before Daniel was born, maybe it was after he was born, but one way or another, tigers are vicious apex predators that rip things apart for meat. And I think it was very strategic of the people of the land of make-believe, specifically King Friday, to ensure that their diet did not consist of meat. Maybe on a special occasions, but you never know if it's going to scratch that itch. So he kind of put it under it's so stupid, but like encourage the tiger family to eat healthy. He saw they were very impressionable, and that by singing songs, by singing jingles, he could brainwash these tigers into living how they want, acclimate them into his society so that they don't overstep his rule. Because Lord knows, you look at King Friday and he's an old man. It's kind of crazy how old he looks, and it's not just because his hair is, you know, gray. He looks like one of those decrepit old kings. They kind of spiffed him up a little bit, but like if you've ever seen the original Mr. Rogers, his puppet is nasty. He's just like that friar who's like, "You want to buy some mushrooms out of my bag that I keep in my pants?" It's like, I don't know where I'm going with that, but they definitely souped him up a little bit, and he looks a lot better than that, but he still looks very old, which is crazy because his wife, his kids, none of them resemble him at all, which makes me think that he's a stepdad king. Like either he adopted them, or whenever the original king got killed by the tigers, yeah, I said it, he stepped in and was the man of the house. And rather than put the tigers down, he thought they could be a real asset to the neighborhood. If you've ever seen the series, you know that King Friday is soft. He's a freaking soft dude. Like if he ever makes a royal decree, usually it's like, "I royally decree," and this isn't him, but like normally a king would be like, "I decree that no one poop in the streets on Thursdays, and if you do, you will be beheaded." Like, and you come off as like a G, man. You're like, "I'm running this. Don't step my boundaries or we'll crush your head." But King Friday's like, "I decree that we really like our tiger family." Like little weenie stuff like that. But I think there's a method to that madness. The reason why it's always encouraged to sing songs and learn lessons is it brainwashes the people in the land of make-believe to not overstep their bounds, to stay within their guidelines, and to be this perfect society that King Friday is responsible of. I can't see any other reason why this weenie king would be in charge other than being, brainwashing. It doesn't feel like he really has any authority. It doesn't really feel like he has any leeway, but everybody really looks at him and they're like, "Oh, the king, it's such an honor." And so that's theory number one, is that the tiger family at some point snapped and killed the original king. And so King Friday is the new king. I don't have any idea of what the original one would be named, but he stepped in and essentially ensured that wouldn't happen again, and instead employed the tiger family to be the main assets of their neighborhood. But why would he do this? Why would he put the rest of them in danger? And I think it's because Daniel Tiger has the power to manipulate the land of make-believe. Whatever he wants to do for the day, the entire neighborhood essentially revolves around him. And I think he has this power of, I don't know, like suggestion is what I want to say, where whatever he says is going to happen that day, even though he's young and he learns lessons and stuff. And I think that's part of his brainwashing process. Ultimately, Daniel Tiger is the one who controls the neighborhood. And I feel like King Friday knows how to manipulate that and keep it to his advantage. Now, I'm getting real deep here. But yeah, that's my theory, is that the tigers are dangerous, but King Friday brainwashes them into being a part of his society. Kind of crazy, but is it really? Watch the episodes. Let me know what you think. And honestly, that part about Daniel Tiger being able to manipulate the neighborhood doesn't even have to be a part of the reason why King Friday spared the tigers. If you look at all the other members of the neighborhood, you have a couple of cats, you have a couple of owls, you have Music Man Stan, who never stops playing music in his music shop, you have a baker, you have a doctor who doubles as a firefighter, but haven't really seen her do too much. You have a platypus, and they didn't even come until long after this all happened. Who are you going to have defend the neighborhood if stuff strikes? The apex predators, or all these little dinky characters that happen to come together? The power of friendship will overcome. Yeah, but it doesn't hurt to have a couple of tigers on your side, does it? So I don't even think he needed to know about it. I don't even think Daniel Tiger was born when all of this went down. I don't think Prince Wednesday was born either. In fact, because I said that King Friday had adopted Prince Tuesday, I actually think Prince Wednesday is Prince Tuesday's son, and that he messed up. Because if you've ever watched the show, you notice that Prince Tuesday works pretty much every job in the town. They go to the grocery store. Oh, Prince Tuesday's working at the cashier. Oh, you go to, to have dinner at the Italian restaurant. Who's your waiter? Prince Tuesday. You see an ice cream man walking through the park. Oh, who is that? That's Prince Tuesday. Who's the lifeguard at the pool? Prince Tuesday. The dude works everywhere. The village would not run without him. That's why I think King Friday's soft, man. He may be able to manipulate people, but he's soft. He has a son doing all this work, but why? I think it's because Prince Tuesday was irresponsible at one point and went out and got a girl knocked up and ended up having Prince Wednesday. And so to spare the royal family from shame, King Friday adopted Prince Wednesday and claimed that he was his child, but also put Prince Tuesday to work. And on top of going to college, he has to work all these jobs to learn what responsibility is. So eventually he can rule the king, because all he's seen so far is an irresponsible guy who knocked up some girl during college. Or before college, obviously. It would have probably been during high school. Oh, the shame. Oh, the shame. But yeah, that's my theory. Like, a lot of royal secrets going on in the land of make-believe, the neighborhood of make-believe, whatever they freaking call it. Daniel Tiger's neighborhood. And honestly, that's my favorite theory because I wrote it. Like, I borrowed a couple of ideas to, like I said, to supplement, primarily with the Prince Tuesday being the father thing. But for the most part, I had thought about all of those on my own, and so I'm proud about that. But in comparison to the Bluey Theories and this Daniel Tiger theory, the Blue's Clues theory is kind of a letdown. I probably should have ended with the Daniel Tiger one, but hey, we are too far gone now. No, you're not. You could just edit it. We're too far gone now. We're going to end on a maybe some people out here will enjoy this, and it's worth doing. So without further ado, let's enter into the final segment, the Blues Clues theory, question mark? And the big theory that surrounds Blues Clues is actually very simple, and you can kind of wear clothing from any of the three following and it still works. He's either an inmate, like the main character Steve, Josh, or Joe are an inmate, a psychiatric patient, or a drug user. All three exactly the same thing, but essentially they're one of those three things. And the inmate one is reasoning that in the original Blues Clues, essentially Steve was filming in front of a green screen, and even if he was moving, the background would just move behind him. He was never actually moving. All of the things that he could get his hands on or that were in the bathroom, even the utensils in the kitchen, none of them were like knives or anything. They were all very common things that you would find in a jail cell or maybe even at a psychiatric hospital. That's why I think those two are very closely paired together. Obviously, if you're on drugs, you're seeing your salt and your pepper talk to you and your alarm clock's like, hey, it's good to see ya. Then you're probably on drugs. But like I said, any of the three of them work. The cell one's just a little bit different because it would make sense because as Steve's leaving, someone else is going to replace him in the cell, which would explain why Joe's there. And then 10 years later, Josh is there. And so essentially the premise of Blues Clues is people trying to cope with these situations that they're in, or they're just on a psychedelic trip and they see a dog who wants to play a game with them. But it would make sense that as a psychiatric patient or at a jailhouse where you're counting down the days where you're trying to figure out how to cope, that you would have an active imagination thing going on. Or in jail, because obviously not everybody in jail is psychotic, that the pressures of the environment would get to you or break you a little bit. I'm kind of glossing over this a little bit, mainly because this isn't the theory that I would personally go with. I would go more towards the the drug user or someone who's crazy and living at home, because I do think this actually takes place at a house, but it's a nice thought, and they put it together very well. Those are the initial thoughts, but I'm not the biggest fan of those theories because it kind of takes away from Blue. There's not really an emphasis on why it's a blue dog who wants to play stuff with you. Yeah, it's in your imagination. Yeah, oh, I'm seeing a blue dog is totally a drug addict thing, but it really doesn't include Blue in the theory at all. And so that's why I'm not a big fan of it. I think Blue needs to be singled out because she is such a unique character and has been around for ever, which is why I like the theory that Blue is actually an entity that feeds off of playing these games with whoever it's living with at the time. If you've ever seen the video game known as Dead by Daylight, it's kind of a premise that's similar to that. In Dead by Daylight, there is an entity that utilizes killers to try and kill survivors. And as the killers are killing survivors, the entity feeds off the fear and off of all of the emotions and tension that comes from the situation. And so that's why it puts these situations together so it can feed more and more and more. So essentially it takes control of Ghostface from Scream or Michael Myers and puts them in this void, and then traps all of these other survivors in there, and through constantly seeing these same people get killed over and over and over again, it feeds off of that emotion. Well, I'm proposing, or whoever wrote this theory is kind of proposing, that Blue is an entity that feeds off of this game, and it's Blue has essentially lived forever, based on I don't know the word for it, but based on the TV show, she really hasn't aged. And with her most recent birthday, why did I just freaking stutter? There was a glitch in the Matrix. Blue, where are you? I'm over here. But the reason why I say that is I don't think it's a coincidence that Steve, Joe, and Josh are all kind of dumb. And Joe and if you've watched any of the newest Blue's Clues called Blue's Clues and You with Josh, whenever Steve and Joe come into the episode, they're not as dumb as they used to be. They are experienced. Steve is an investigator who solves crimes. Joe is a successful business person, and Josh is just kind of this dimwit. And they were all like that at some point. So I think Blue feeds off of their intelligence, makes them dumb, sucks off their probably should choose a different word. Absorbs their life energy and takes away their intelligence, and then plays these games for its own enjoyment so that it can continue living. I think it literally, I don't know exactly what it lives off of, but I think it utilizes these situations to feed off of whoever it's with. And then whenever it's fed enough, whenever it can't extract anymore, or if it seems like its victim is breaking free or has to go somewhere because Steve went to college. I don't remember what happened with Joe, but they had stuff that tore them away from the situation. It just attaches to somebody. And for whatever reason, there's a theory that Blue is actually a curse because Steve and Joe are brothers and then Josh is their cousin. So it's just a pass on the family curse. I know it's not the most elaborate, theory, but it is a fun one that's being discussed. I also really like a video that was produced by Meat Canyon, and I wouldn't recommend everybody go out and watch this video because Meat Canyon's art style is a little disturbing and a lot of his videos are disturbing, but he paints it in the best way possible. His video kind of goes in the direction of it's all in Steve's head, where his ends up being a normal dog, but I think it does a great job of Steve asks Blue a question and Blue wants to play Blue's Clues, and it's we don't have to do this every time. It's to the point where hey Blue, I'm going to the grocery store. Do you want anything? No, just tell me what you want. I don't want to play this stupid game right now. But that's what Blue thrives off of is people playing the game. And because I guess her being around them takes away their intelligence, she's able to feed off them all the time. And that's just a theory. The last of the theories, actually. So if you enjoyed that segment, let me know. I do feel like going back and editing, because this is me in post-edit, that it was a little bit messier than I would have liked. So I would love some feedback on how you guys think that format went. And if it wasn't ideal, I can totally go, next time we do some sort of theory, it'll probably be a little bit more structured. This one was kind of since I'm kind of going off memory on some things and I'm kind of using some notes for some things, it was a little bit of a mix. And so at times it felt a little hectic. So let me know what you guys think of that. That way I can improve these kind of videos going forward, or these kind of podcast episodes going forward. And ironically, guys, I don't have a MyRAR to do this week. I haven't watched any new movies. I need to get on that. And me and my wife have a couple of movies that I think we should watch. So hopefully by this time next week, I'll have one, maybe two that we can do. But we'll see. We will see. I'm not promising anything. I haven't promised anything. Did I promise it? Because if I did, then I'm a freaking liar and I need to repent. So I guess all that's left is to end on a positive note. And you're not going to believe this. I'm reading from the same book I've been reading from. It's the ultimate letdown. No, I think for the most part, I've received some good feedback on this book. And I do think it's good advice that everybody can kind of take. So I think it's good that we keep reading from this, but I am hoping to diversify it a bit moving forward. And I don't know how many episodes it's going to be, but I'm just going to continue reading different books and taking chapters from those books that I like. So I will once again be reading from Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual by Jocko Willink. And the title of the title of the chapter is Fear of Failure. Fear of failure. Fear of failure can keep you from taking the risk. It can leave you sitting there, paralyzed and not taking action. And that is obviously bad, but I don't want you to overcome fear of failure. I want you to be afraid of failure. Fear of failure is good. Fear of failure will keep you up at night, planning, rehearsing, going over contingencies. Fear of failure will keep you training hard. Fear of failure will stop you from cutting corners. Fear of failure will keep you working, thinking, striving, and relentlessly trying to be more prepared for battle. So I want you to be afraid of failing. I fear failure. But more important, I want you to be horrified, absolutely terrified of sitting on the sidelines and doing nothing. That is what I want you to be afraid of. Waking up in 6 days, 6 weeks, or 6 years, maybe even 60 years, and being no closer to your goal. You have made no progress. That is the horror. That is the nightmare. That is what you really need to be afraid of, being stagnant. So get up and go. Take the risk, take the gamble, take the first step, take action, and don't let another day slip by. Which is a very powerful statement. But I do like it because a lot of people are like, you shouldn't be afraid to fail because from failure you can learn lessons. But at the same time, you shouldn't go in being prepared to fail. You should always prepare to your absolute best of your ability. There's an underlying lesson to give your 100% in everything you do. And you still have to take that step because going into it and possibly failing is a scary thing. But the ultimate failure is often not taking that first step, not going through those reps, not pursuing that goal in the first place and living to regret it. And I don't know, it really is a kick in the pants because I have a lot of projects, I have a lot of personal things that I otherwise I'm afraid of. Like whenever it came to putting out this podcast and sharing it on social medias, I don't know what it is about it, but like obviously this podcast isn't going to thrive without people listening to it. But the idea of like seeing my old pastors view my story and see that I uploaded a new episode, I'm like, oh, are they going to listen to it? What are they going to think? But the reality is, if I want people to view my podcast, it's got to get put out there. It's got to be shown across all eyes. It's got to be available to anyone who might want to listen to it. And just because I might be afraid of what one or two people think doesn't mean I shouldn't still put out an episode that I think is really good. And I think this episode is very good. Doing the podcast in itself was a thing I was afraid to do again because I was worried about the quality. And so far, I think I've done a pretty good job. I've had that same feedback from Rocky, like I said in episode 1, a very big friend of the podcast, helped me in the first podcast quite a ton, gave me some positive feedback. So things are going in a positive direction. I'm feeling that. I'm enjoying it. And I wouldn't have had that if I wouldn't have taken the leap and done it. And obviously that can go deeper into bigger things in our lives and stuff like that. And I feel like I've done that quite a bit since reading that chapter 2. And hopefully people out there are maybe afraid of failure, but hopefully you are terrified of what could be and not learning that answer. Obviously, not every opportunity needs to be pursued. There are enticing situations that might seem like you should jump on them, but ultimately that's up to our wisdom, and I would encourage you to read the Bible. This is you're converting to Christianity as I'm saying this, yes. But no, that's all I wanted to say, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and I just want to thank you if you've made it to this point in the podcast. That's so awesome. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble about little kid shows and being an old man who's reading too much into these little kid things. But I really do appreciate you guys taking these crazy journeys with me, and I really do appreciate you listening. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Rate us on Spotify, rate us on Apple Podcasts. Every little bit helps, but just by seeing... Sorry, I had a stroke there for a second. But just by listening to this episode all the way to this point, you've already done so much. So thank you guys for listening, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.